Hi everyone. Ready to start? Yeah. Okay, good. In the next 45 minutes, I want to talk about digital interpretation of cultural heritage. Does any of you have any idea what this is about? Or what do you think it's going to be about?
Maybe it's like taking some steps or some cultural heritage and making it into digital so that it's not going to be lost or like not destroyed.
Okay.
Three-dimensional modeling.
Okay. Well, the talk is over. You know everything, so no. So I come from a company called Arctur from Slovenia, from that direction, 1 hour in that direction. We are a high performance computing company, which in simpler ways means that we own a supercomputer. So the company owns a supercomputer, and we use this supercomputer for various activities. Either we lend the supercomputing power to other companies. For example, there's another company who is making airplanes, and while making airplanes, you want to test, if the airplane is well made, or if the design is well thought of. But instead of making it and then putting it into the air and not being sure if it's gonna fly or not, you can do it virtually. You can do it on a computer. And this is a very complex calculation because you need to take into account various things, especially here the problematic is this, the dynamics of fluids, like air, for example. So how to simulate that. So this is, for example, one of the uses that we use the supercomputer. And other, for example, is what I'm going to talk about today. And there are others as well. So we are an IT company. Me, myself, I'm not a programmer. I'm not an IT guy. I come from a social sciences background. This is why I'm the translator between the tech guys and our clients or the other project leaders. So first I want to, in a way, show you no, nothing. I want to, in a way, go back to the year 2019, when Slovenia, the Ministry of Economic Development of Slovenia, had set a mission to be one of the leading European countries with regards to digital interpretation, cultural heritage, especially to digitally enriched tourist products. Back then, the thought was that, okay, this is the map of Slovenia, looks like a chicken, I know. And all of the dots are actually different monuments of immovable cultural heritage. When I say movable cultural heritage, you know what I mean? You know the distinction between movable and immovable? Yeah? So movable are objects that are in the museums, and immovable are buildings that cannot be moved. Buildings, statues, it could be landscapes, it could be ruins, so things that cannot be moved. So these are all of these dots are. And in many cases, it's quite a lot, right? I mean, the country is rather small. We have 2 million people, and there are 30,000 of these dots here. And for me, each of these dots presents an opportunity to tell a story. This could be small things. It could be a plaque on a wall. It could be a statue. It could be a castle. It could be a church, whatever. And each of them, of course, if you go there and if you look at it, doesn't necessarily tell you much. I mean, there's probably a information panel outside, and okay, you get some information, but not really much. By the way, how many of you have been to Slovenia? One. Ooh, bravo. How was it? Okay. Where were you? Okay. So this is the place where Have you been to the previous? Okay, so now this is a repetition for you a little bit. You can join me and do the talk instead of me. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so each of them, could be tell a story. And especially if we use digital technologies, we can tell richer story because we can add this digital layer on top of it. We could add videos, audio, augmented reality, is something in virtual reality, and we can change this, I don't know, some rocks there that there remains, we can, tell about what used to be there. So this is why we think that this is important. And next I want to basically just show you a video of what happened afterwards. Okay. So as you've seen across Slovenia, 30 different locations from small mountain huts to, for Slovenia, rather large castles. Maybe for you, you don't think it's that big castle, because in Slovenia everything is kind of small. And all of these were, as you said, it started with a 3D and then continued with other media. We've put all of these things together on a website at the end, where people could see, but only parts of what happened, because the main idea was, of course, that we create a tourist product on the location so that people go visit actually these places. And the destinations received quite a lot of awards. There were lots of organizations involved. And why I'm telling is that regardless of, I don't know, what are you studying actually? Tourism, all of you? No, okay. Oh, I was. Okay, you're tourism, and the rest? Foreign languages, okay. Math, okay. Physics, okay. Anyone else? That's it? For international relations. International relations, okay. What I always stress in such projects is that you need to combine different profiles. I mean, to create what we're doing, even though we are a tech company, we in a way know that it's not just tech guys that can do it, because at the end, tech guys are good in some aspects and you need other disciplines as well. And we often say that in our projects, we're combining 4 different elements, let's say. One of them is, of course, since we're talking about cultural heritage, is the expertise on cultural heritage. So to really understand what this castle is about, and not to just make up some stories about it. Then the second one is storytelling, like how to tell a story, which is a unique skill that I think it's more and more important. So how to grab the attention of the people and, of course, lead them through. And storytelling through movie is different than storytelling through a virtual reality, or different than storytelling through like oral presentation. So that is an important aspect in such projects. Then the third one for us, of course, is technology. Without the knowledge of technology, you cannot do much. And of course, the sustainability. So not necessarily only sustainability in the sense of environmental sustainability, but also economically. So that we create something that people will actually want, and that it will actually sustain and live its own life further on. I won't bore you with the educational materials that we've prepared there, but I have a question, and then I continue. So I said that for us, it starts with 3D models. Do you know what is, or how to make a 3D model? You mentioned it before, so I thought that you know, but
how very, very I forgot the word, but not really well because
okay.
And maybe I can just guess. So it's probably if you have a object, the physical one, measure it, and then scale down or something, or if it's made up, and if you're a physical model, you can just make it with the product, but I don't know, like this.
Okay, this is one of the ways we say like 3D modeling, where you basically recreate it in digital way. But I'll show you a different way how we also do it. Anyone else? You that study physics, have you ever no? Okay. No, not necessarily. So first of all, a 3D model is not a 360-degree image. If you use Google Street View, have you used it? So this is 360-degree image. You are on a street, you see the space around you, but you can move further, let's say, but you basically are just jumping from image to image, like on a street. you cannot walk into the house. You cannot look at the house from the other side, unless there is another image, of course, on the other side. So this is the main difference. A 360-degree image is an image put around you, and it's flat. You know, there you cannot go. If you would go into it, you would bump into it and come out of the other way. A 3D model enables you what is here shown as virtual reality, that it's an actually three-dimensional space, like the space in which we live in. You know, it's not a. This is not a. It's not an image here. It's physical here. I mean, it's in three-dimensional. It's not a houses there are not just an image on the wall here. They're actually there, and it's the same in 3D. And why I'm explaining this is because often I see this confusion, and it's very hard sometimes to. That's why at the beginning I want to clarify that this difference. So in general, there are two ways of making a 3D model, or three. You said the third one, but there are two ways of making a digital model of an existing thing. One of them is laser scanning, and the second one is photogrammetry. In our company, we mostly do photogrammetry, and then we combine photogrammetry with laser scanning. So first steps are, let's say that continuation is similar, but at the beginning it's different. So with laser scanning, we have a laser scanner, which is a device that basically sends out laser beams. In physics, you learn about laser scanning. I don't know. Yeah. Let's say. So it sends out laser beams, and based on the reflection of those beams, those signals, it basically knows where an object, how far it is, where it is. And you can, that way you can also record the color of it, or guess the color of it. Photogrammetry is a different. You don't have a device that sends out lasers. You have a camera, like a regular camera, like your phone. You take photos, and then you turn these two-dimensional photos into three-dimensional objects, and I'll show you how. So how we do it, we go onto the terrain, we bring normal cameras and cameras on a drone, so drones. And the whole idea is to capture the object as many times possible from various angles. And we have here a system, so it's like really, for one object, let's say it's 20,000 images. So it's really a lot of images. And we do it then of course, in different conditions, because you cannot always do it in the perfect conditions. But this is the idea. They're not reading correctly. They don't see. So I said, you make lots of images, lots of photos of an object, of a building, and this could sound simple, you know, you just take pictures. But for example, this is a situation that we had in one of the monasteries. So it's overgrown with trees. So you cannot really fly a drone there, or we could, but it's kind of dangerous for the drone, not for the people. Or like that. So, as I said, the main idea is photo capturing an object from various angles. What we do then is we go back home and we need to organize all of these photos that come from various sources in a logical manner, so that it's not just random photos somewhere. And we need to edit the photos, because you know, when you're taking a photo with your camera, if it's very, very light, the sun is very strong, the image could be either over lit, so too light, overlit, or it could be too dark, like everything is in shadows. And this is not good. So we need to basically erase all shadows and erase all these overlight lit areas to make, in a way, it uniform. So to reduce basically everything that is, let's say, in a shade, like here we have some parts you see that they're visible. And this is a human task. It's like you do it on your phone before you post it to Instagram. This is the same, just that you do it 20,000 times. Well, it's not the really most creative job, but yeah. What we then do is these photos are in a way overlapping. So they are usually 80% overlapping. So every next one is an overlap of the previous one. And when you overlap two of them, you can, in a way, identify the points where they are overlapping. And more of them that you add on, more of these points you're creating. And these points are not just in two dimensions, but they're in 3 dimensions, because you have taken photos from various sides. So you have these points that are, in a way, points in space. So it looks like that, but there's, of course, many more of these points, and it kind of looks like that. So in an example of a castle, this looks like that. So this one has 23 million points. Or these huts in a forest that have you seen also previously? There's 18 million of these points out there. And this is, for example, a task where, of course, a supercomputer helps you because it kind of makes everything much faster, and especially it gives you the option to repeat these tasks. So not to do it once and then you wait for 1 week for the computer to do its job, because this is how it usually is. You put it to a job and then you basically just wait a few days for a computer to process your task. And after, let's say, 1 week, you find out, oh, I made a mistake here. I need to repeat it, you know? And with a supercomputer, it enables you to basically do it faster and, of course, to repeat it many more times and try with different configurations. Once we have these, and this is what we call a point cloud. So it's basically a cloud of points. What we need to do is then to connect the dots between these dots. So if you imagine, if you have 2 points, you connect them with a line. You add a third point, you have a triangle. You add a fourth point, you have 2 triangles, and so on. And this is how basically you have more and more triangles that are not just triangles in a flat area, but they're triangles in space. And once you put the images that you have also taken onto that, you get basically a 3D model with a texture. And this is how you make a 3D model. And now to repeat, the laser scanner basically is the same process, just that the initial part, I'll say it differently. The laser scanner already gives you this point cloud, because basically it was shooting out laser beams, recording it, and generating this point cloud. Okay. Then we publish it usually online to a viewer so that people can see it like that, because this is, for example, a file of a size of 2 gigabytes, one model, which it's kind of hard for, probably also on my computer, I cannot open it, the file actually. But if we convert it and showcase it in an online browser style, then it works. We add some additional elements, and this is how we did this first part. And for us, this is only the beginning, because it said 3D model is, I think you said, it's a documentation of what is there outside. it's basically a recording of what is there. But this is not really a tourist product. I mean, it's just a replication in digital world. So this is not a tourist product, 3D model, but it could be a material for making a tourist product. For example, one of the ways is if we create a rendered video out of it. So we, it's not just the model there, it's in a context with some text, with some other animation and so on. It's basically a presentation. This is a simple way of using a 3D model. Maybe another step is in a hologram. Have any of you seen a hologram before? Yeah? Okay. A hologram basically it's an illusion, you know? It looks like it's three-dimensional because you can walk around it, but basically it's there's nothing there. It's just an image that is reflected in a glass pyramid, and because of this angle through which you're looking, it looks three-dimensional. So it's an illusion that it looks like there's actually inside, but inside here, you see this is the pyramid. And inside, there's nothing inside here. It's below here are screens, and the image of the screens is reflected through this glass. So it looks like there's something inside, but there's nothing inside. So this is another way. And this is, for example, useful where we want to present more like architectural elements of a building, something where we want that someone looks at the building from the outside. Another step is a virtual reality. So we want people to go inside of the model or around the model. So for example, this is a virtual reality game that we have created for a castle here close to the border. And it's a virtual reality where you are entering a castle and you walk through different rooms, and in each of the rooms you are basically you have a task, and this task is connected to a legend that happened there. So this is how you get to know basically different legends that are related to this castle. So in that case, this is an interactive virtual reality, meaning that people actually need to do something inside. They can walk around the space, they can move. Of course, we need to limit where they can go because it's not just, and this is, for example, these are the legends and so on and so on. This is a very good tool for, let's say, people of your age, and for people of older age, it's kind of complicated because it's hard for them to already navigate within virtual reality. It's just very, how to say, they feel very strange inside. For me, it's in a way funny to look how many troubles they have with something that for you would be like very intuitive. I mean, even if you have never done it, you would be very good in 5 minutes. While older generations, they have troubles here. So this is something that we don't do for where the older generations are using it. Another example, how we do it, is augmented reality. So augmented reality is something where we have a physical object out there and we add something to it. We augment it. No? Not working. So maybe you see here, so you scan the code, there's just this building with empty walls, but on our phone you see a wheel that is inside of the building. For example, in that case, this is Europe's largest wooden water wheel. It has 30 meters in diameter. It's wooden. It's rather large wheel inside of this building. But the main point was that this wheel was used to pump water outside of the mine. So outside of the depth of 280 meters, they pumped water out with that wheel. And of course, you cannot see it because it's in the house and underground, unless you use this augmented reality app so that you basically can see what happened very down deep. Then another example that what we also did in these cases was, we call it interpretation rooms. Basically, it's rooms where we put in different gadgets inside. So this is the case of the Posavia castles. So Posavia is a region in east of Slovenia, and it's famous for many castles that they're having there. And these castles we presented in this small room. It's a very small room. I mean, maybe 1/3 of that space. It used to be a tourist information office with like lots of brochures, bicycles stored there, green walls, and so on. And we transformed it. We painted it totally black. So when you step in, you're in a different space. The background music is a medieval music played on electric guitar. So it's kind of a little bit different experience because there's this electric guitar playing songs that are 500 years old or more. And yeah, we have eight virtual reality glasses. So these ones are non-interactive, meaning that you put them on and things happen around you. You don't go anywhere. In a way, you're inside of a movie. So everything is happening around you. You're sitting there and just, turning around your head. And here we have, for example, holograms that we have different videos and so on. And why they did that is because they wanted to promote the castles. And these castles are far away from each other, like 1 hour from one another, let's say. So where do you present these castles? I mean, we had 7 castles, and it was impossible to decide, where to present them. And then we said, okay, let's go to the place where there's the most people in the region. And this is actually in a spa, in a thermal resort. Like people are there swimming in the pools, like sliding on the slides and so on. Like it's kids resort, so kids and families. And after 5 days of being there, people are kind of bored because it's pools again. So they think, okay, what to do? And often they come here. This is free of charge for them. And the idea is, okay, if they come here, they will here enjoy the castles. And then the kids will say, hey, mom, dad, shall we go to see the castle that, the same castles? It's a way how to inspire them what to do next after, let's say, a few days of being there. Another example that we another thing that we did was on the Slovenian coast. We have a very small coast, only 50 kilometers, so probably smaller than in your country. There's a small town. It's called Izola, which used to be an island. Throughout its most of the history, it was an island. Now it's basically a peninsula. And we wanted to tell the story of that island. And it's 8,000 years old story that started with the Romans and then basically continues to today. And it's kind of hard to present 8,000 years in a few minutes. Especially it's hard to make people really understand that this was an island, that it's, because even though the name tells you, I mean, it's Isola in Italian, this is Isola, like an island. People don't, in a way, realize it because it doesn't look like. So this is the whole. What we did is we made a 3D model, physical 3D model, a maquette, let's say, of this town, of the today's town, and then we used projectors to project the town, different happenings. So you see here, like if you project a blue color on a white surface, it looks like a sea, even though there are buildings there. So this is what we did. And again, here what's important is the music behind. We compose the whole music. The whole video has 9 chapters. Each chapter is for a different period, and each of the chapters has a different song composed to it. So that when you're in this space, you see, again, it's a very dark space. You're there with this projection. In a way, you fall in and you forget where you are. You're within that story. Okay, yeah, so this I already explained you. This is the small space that I've been talking to you before. Additional, for example, what we did here was, now I'm jumping back to the castle story. What we did here was an app that basically guides people to go through, to explore these 7 castles. And on each of the castles, you have some tasks that you need to do. And if you do all of the tasks, you win an award, and so on. So this motivates you to go around. Okay. I have another example that we did is in the Central East Slovenia. There are 3 lakes that are artificial lakes. They're there because of the mine. You know, when you're digging the mine underground, basically the surface starts bending down because there's less and less things below. And this is how you get these basins where the water fills them, and you have lakes. And this is how 3 lakes emerged there in the last 50 years. And because of this lake formation, 7 villages were in a way evacuated. People had to move out, and all the houses were abandoned, destroyed, and in a way are now under the water. And for example, here we wanted to tell this story. This is not a very romantic story. It's a story about people that had to leave their houses, that had to, that lost their homes. And we still believe that tourism is not always about romantic stories, because people want to travel somewhere to feel the location, not to just see the happy endings, but to understand it. More and more people want to understand the culture, more to understand the history. And history is, as you know, it has ups and downs. So what we did is that we present people with how the lakes were formed in an animation style. So we basically present them how the lakes were formed. But then we take them on a boat, on a physical boat. In the middle of they get virtual reality glasses, and then they virtually descend into the lake, and they see the villages there. So these are, of course, computer-generated villages. The villages don't exist anymore. There is nothing there. But we, in a way, talked to the old people. We looked at the old photos, and we generated these few shots of how the village used to look like. And the old people actually really liked this because they saw, okay, yeah, this is actually how the house looked like. It's just funny that they couldn't agree on what kind of tree was on the middle, on the main square. Like one person said, it's this species, the other that's something different. And I was like, okay, haven't you lived there? How don't you know what tree was there? But yeah, so these are people who are like 90 now. So maybe also in their memory things in a way change somehow. So yeah, this is how we do it. But now we have some time, 5 minutes. I want, in a way, first I would want to ask you, have any of you participated or seen something like that so far? In something? No? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, what kind of? What was it?
You sit in something, you put on your reality, the thing is most, and you see like you are moving in some color, monster babies,
okay.
monsters.
Okay. Was it like a tourist location, or it was like a random roller coaster?
It's like a part of
okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm sure that you can think of examples where you could use these approaches to your hometowns, to the places that find you, that you like, or something like that. Does any of you have any like immediate idea how you would do it? Let's say in your homes, your hometowns.
I know that in our town there were a few different municipal buildings, and the one which now is 56, and it's much more attractive compared to the old photos. So maybe you can implement it into some kind of also virtual reality, and then show the concept, not the concept, how it looked like before the one, because it was
okay. Yeah.
Because they were, if you see the old photos, they were much more nice and much nicer.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else?
In our hometown, it's like a long time since we are making wine in the city, so maybe we can make some real thing that people see how they used to make wine, how they used to squeeze the grapes with the legs and all that.
Now it reminded me of another thing that we haven't done it, we have seen it. It's in a restaurant. You sit around the table, physically, you sit around the table with your friends. And then, of course, the waiter comes, you order whatever you order, and then you wait. But basically, on the table, you start seeing images. It's because there's a projection like down. You see small dwarfs bringing a plate. Then they bring forks. Then they start bringing, I don't know, let's say that you ordered some meat and some potatoes. First, then they bring raw potatoes. They make a fire there, so they, in a way, are burned there. And blah, 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 so on. And once they're done there, the waiter physically comes and serves you the plate of the same thing there. So in a way, I imagine with the wine, you also order a wine, but you don't see what is behind the wine. I think this is important to the people, to tell them, okay, you have this glass of wine, but behind that, like making of it has to grow somewhere. People had to care about it. Then they had to collect it and so on. To present all of this story, I think this is important for the people. What we did in one of the locations is we, in a way, filmed what is happening in the vineyard in 4 different seasons. So in its virtual reality. So you are, let's say that you're like always within a vineyard, and you see like there's a tractor coming there, and then they're doing something, and then winter comes, and then there's another thing what they're doing. So this is how people understand that, you know, there are people taking care of the vineyard throughout the whole year, so that you can have that one glass of wine. And I think this is really important to tell, you know, not just to give the wine, but to tell the story. Okay. Anyone else? Any idea? Well, I want you to, these technologies are kind of new. Of course they are, but the development is really fast, and they like develop really quickly, and they're also less and less expensive. So in a few years, things that are today considered expensive, in a few years they will be normal. So also making 3D models, I presented it like it's super complex, but you have an app to make a 3D model. It's free of charge. It's, of course, it's not so detailed and so nice, and you only take 100 images, not 20,000 of them. But it's the same thing, and maybe in 2 years it will be different. So I would say that in technology will enable all of that. What will be important are the ideas, what to do and how to tell that story. And this is why I think, especially you as fresh minds, let's say, you know, with creative ideas are important, because you have your own perspective and you can tell that perspective through that media. And that would be my conclusion in a way, you know, that this, I want you that when you go back to your homes to think, you know, that people are interested in your locations. It's just how we present that to them. It could be in a boring way and they will come and then they will leave, or you can make like really nice experiences and they will remember it forever. And technology here can be of help. So yeah, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the program. Yeah, it's over. Oh, is it? Yes. So.
Thank you.
Okay, dobry dnia. Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Goriot. I'm going to take over the next session after. It won't be as pretty as Mateusz's, but hopefully of some interest. So I'll just share the screen.
I can confirm we are actually viewing the slides. Thanks.
Yes. I'll just try and get it to the expand it. There we are. So I'm Paul Goriot. As you may tell from my accent, I'm actually British. And my profession is actually ecologist. I've been working in the Black Sea region for quite some time now, since 1993, actually. And during that time, I married a Ukrainian lady, and we have an NGO based in Odessa called Agricola. And Agricola was a participant in a project run by Arctour on Tourism 4.0. And we participated that into testing out a tourism impact model and tourism development strategy for Odessa city. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that work today. Many of I hope a lot of you have already been to Odessa, especially the Ukrainian participants. You may know it quite well. It was founded originally as a small trading and fishing entrepot by Tatars around about 1240, and was eventually taken over by Tsarist Russia in 1794 during the Russian-Turkish Wars. Then it got a charter from Catherine the Great to be developed, and a lot of the military people who'd been involved in that war, who were actually from a lot of different countries like Spain, Belgium, France, UK were also there, set to building up this port into what it is today. So during that great building phase during the 19th century, there were people coming from all over the world. Ukrainians, of course, were already there along with some Russians. And then there was a big Jewish settlement, Greeks, Bulgarians, Romanians, Italians, especially Italians were architects there. And it was actually Belgians which set up the original town plan based on designs for Washington, DC, as it happens. So since that time, it's grown into the largest city on the Black Sea coast in the north, over 1 million inhabitants, became very wealthy through trading grain, especially, which continues to the present day. And at its peak, it was the wealthiest city in the former empire after St. Petersburg and later in the Soviet Union. And it is a very cosmopolitan city. It's always attracted a lot of people, as I mentioned, from all over Europe. And it has a sort of strange multicultural culture all of its own. And that welcoming attitude to foreigners meant it was heavily visited, heavily invested, and became known as the Pearl of the Black Sea. During the 20th century, right up to Ukraine's independence in 2001, and subsequently, tourism in the city grew enormously. So from cruise ships to people coming by air, train, and in their cars. However, it's going through a rather dark patch, as the whole of Ukraine is at the moment. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea illegally, and that caused a lot of international tourism to cease because organized parties like cruise liners and so on, they need insurances, and for some time Ukraine was listed as not safe. So far as Odessa was concerned, however, the annexation of Crimea meant that a lot of tourism was displaced from Crimea to Odessa and the Black Sea coast south of Odessa. And for a while, there was a big boom and actually quite a lot of influx of people building illegally small hotels and rest places. And virtually the whole of the coast south of Odessa now is occupied by a sort of informal tourism industry. Then we had COVID from 2020 to 2022. So businesses that were already suffering from the Russian annexation suffered again. And finally, if that hadn't killed them, then 2023 and the current war, which started in 2022, it's just been really bad all round for the whole country. So that's about Odessa, but our study was carried out between 2019 and 2020, so just before COVID and the current war, extending slightly into the COVID period, and you'll see some of that coming out in the statistics, as I will show you. So the Tourism 4.0 project was about co-creating tourism for the future with data analytics. and it was funded by the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund. So it was an EU-sponsored project. It took place in 3 countries, in Georgia, Ukraine, and Romania. And as I mentioned, we were involved in the Ukrainian study in Odessa. And we had 2 main things to look at. The application of big data analytics to profile the tourist sector in Odessa, and also the development of a tourism impact model, which is a sort of multi-criteria analysis approach to look at the way tourism affects environmental, social, and economic sustainability, for better or worse. Taking first the big data analytics, we with Arctur collected quite a lot of data by getting access to databases run by Booking.com, TripAdvisor, Skyscanner, and Kyivstar for mobile phone data. And that's what we basically analyzed. There were lots of metadata from satellite images, maps, and so on, but they were just overlays rather than having access to the underlying data. The main analytical tool was Microsoft Power BI, which stands for Business Intelligence. It's a way of creating visualizations using huge data sets and then filtering them in a way that gives you information that you wouldn't just get from looking at the raw data. So Booking.com, I imagine a lot of you are familiar with this program, online booking system for hotels and accommodations. It's the sort of older person's B&B, and it gives you data about hotels that have been booked, their ratings that come back from the visitors who stay there, obviously location data, types of guests that have booked, the accommodation they've booked, and the ratings they give to the hotels. When you have that kind of data, just looking at it on its own, you can start to plot out how accommodations are being used in Odessa. This, for example, looking over on the right here, is a filter of data from September 2020 in any accommodation, because no stars are selected, but it's for families, which means 3 or more people booking a room, and that they stay for more than 3 nights. And you can see that the pattern going really from the Tiligul Liman right around the coast is fairly similar, but there's a big block of accommodation being booked by this group of people in Zatoka. And when you look at that a bit closer, it's because Zatoka is the main destination of people coming from Moldova. This road is just the shortest straight line to Moldova, and that's where they go for their holidays. If we can also filter the data to show the nationality of the guests that were staying in 5-star hotels in August. Again, this was just, all this data was handed to the Odessa City Tourism Department for their further use. And I'm just showing some examples of how they could use it. So taking August and looking at people who stayed in 5-star hotels, we get this nationality chart. As it happens, people coming from Israel topped it. That's because Odessa used to have a very large Jewish community, and a lot of them still come back from Israel to visit the city during the summer. Then a lot of people coming from Germany and Turkey, United States, Moldova, and so on. Those of you from Italy, you're round about down here somewhere. Surprisingly, in even though Italy has very strong historical links with Odessa, it's not heavily visited by Italians. Moving on, looking at TripAdvisor data again, something I'm sure you're familiar with. This is a way of collecting information from travelers, sorting it, classifying it, and people access it to get some information about places to go, how to go. So when they do that, you get location data, user data, and rating data. We had 14,000 records there to look at during our analytical period. This is from 2016 to 2020, so it shows the number of ratings posted to TripAdvisor for Odessa during that period. And not surprisingly, it shows a seasonal pattern going up and down according to when the summer occurs in this period between June and September. But what it also showed from 2016 to 2020 was a gradual decline up until 2019, and then it just fell off a cliff in 2020 when COVID restrictions stopped travel in Europe. I'm not sure how we explain this gentle decline. There was a general decline of tourism in Ukraine anyway after the annexation of Crimea. And also, it's true to say that the tourism offer in Odessa is quite expensive. And I think a lot of people started to find that they could travel, particularly after the EU gave visa-free travel for Ukrainians. They started to go abroad more than just staying at national destinations like Odessa. And these are, you can look at how individual destinations are rated by TripAdvisor users. So in Odessa, Deribasovska Street, which is the famous pedestrian street in the center of the city, is given a good rating, and a lot of people like it. This is the center of the kind of nightlife, restaurants, souvenir shopping, goes to the city garden, which was another place that's quite well rated. So this gives an idea of the kind of destinations that people are going to and how much they think about them. So that's quite useful information showing where you would want to invest in tourism infrastructure. Skyscanner is a flight booking app from America, and we could collect data from that on people who are searching for flights from foreign countries to Odessa. So we can get some idea of who's thinking about coming to the city. When you plot it all out, you see that overwhelmingly people are coming from Central and Northern Europe and the Middle East, Turkey especially. Those are the main people coming, and that accords with the accommodation records that we saw in booking.com to a large extent. And then there's a couple of outliers. I'm not quite sure why people in Alaska are singled out. There must be other North American destinations, but they're not shown in this map. Malaysia, and of course Dubai, because there is a strong link between Odessa and Dubai in terms of trading. So I suspect that isn't really tourism, that's more of a commercial issue there, with people going to Dubai and coming from Dubai to supply markets. Mobile data, this was by far our most extensive data set, up to 12 million records, and the most granular set of data that we had, because it's basically following people's mobile phones. This data is very Hello again. Sorry, that's one of the problems of being in Odessa at the moment. Getting breaks in your link. You'll need to make me a host again, please. Thank you. So just before that short interruption, I was talking about mobile data. It was our biggest data set with up to 12 million records and the most granular. But we also had to pay for it because this kind of data is very valuable. You get an extremely detailed picture of what's going on. Of course, we only get the metadata. We don't know who is actually using these phones. What we get is where they are, what time they were there, and because of their telephone number, we can tell something about their nationality, potentially their age, and income, and I hope this doesn't go on too much. If that happens again, I'll switch to another internet connection. So I was just with mobile data, we get location data, time data, and some data about the users. So again, we can see a picture from mobile data where visitors mostly come from. And actually, most of the people carrying mobile phones into Odessa are coming from America and Russia, Israel, Turkey. So it's a very similar pattern as we saw for the accommodations. Also, it turns out that Belarus and China are quite popular countries for tourists to come to Odessa, or they were. Not so much now, of course. And then there's a bunch of European countries. And then, as we saw before, United Arab Emirates, probably from Dubai. And interesting, although there were a lot of visitors staying in Zatoka from Moldova, that very few of them actually come to Odessa itself. back. Please make me host again. Internet keeps going down for my presentation. So I'll keep my camera off, hopefully that will help. So with the mobile data, we saw that most of the people are coming from the United States, Russia, Israel and Turkey, Belarus, and then many other countries. Italy is here again, as we see, is rather small number of people. We can also plot out where people are going and when they go. So again, we see summer peak of visiting, and interesting, a lot of these people are going up to Kobleva area rather than staying in Odessa. There's a big new tourist, it's not exactly a complex, but there's a lot of tourist accommodations and cabins and small hotels up there at the bottom of Tiligul Liman. Oh, just putting my ecologist's hat on for a minute. It's also, I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that quite a lot of the analysis that was done with Microsoft BI, it's good for big, you really need it for big data, but if you have merely thousands of data points, which a lot of us are working with, Excel is quite a good substitute, particularly because it has a new facility called 3D Maps. You can get to it from the charts area. And this means that if you have any data set which includes positions, locations, or just the names of oblasts or regions or whatever, you can actually plot out that data. So in an exercise that I did for another project, I could easily plot out where different species of birds were using different types of locations. So putting in data about visitors, if you get it from survey data or from the local airport or whatever, and you can then see where they're going using Excel. So not having something like Microsoft BI doesn't necessarily stop you from doing these kind of spatial analyses of tourism flows. Have a look at Excel. Now let's look at the tourism impact model, which is a process where we use different types of indicators and data to look at how tourism affects a particular destination. It's a way for the tourism authority at that location to see what's going on, to do planning for sustainable activities, and provide a monitoring and forecasting facility. It starts with collecting a whole load of data from different sources, including visitor surveys, and filling in a questionnaire. Then you do a multi-attribute analysis of that, which can cope with both quantitative and qualitative responses. It goes into something called this decision modeling system, which then generates an output as a report, classifying how that destination is doing on various parameters. And it's a model, so you can do it iteratively, asking questions like, well, If I had better waste management, would that mean more tourists would go to a particular area, something like that? So it's designed to give you an assessment on which you can then develop a strategy, essentially a tourism development strategy, following very much the lines that were described earlier this morning for business planning. You get to an action plan, and then you can start to organize your investments according to the way you want to develop tourism at a particular location. Data comes from a whole different set of categories and are integrated. There's geographical information, environmental information, social, cultural, and economic information, and all the clusters around them are brought in to the analysis. And importantly, you need to know that this data comes on different timescales. Some of it will come hourly, some of it daily, monthly, and so on. So the way you collect and put the data into the model is also important. And the way that this is displayed to the user is through something called the TIM positioning chart. So there are 4 levels of resource consumption and 4 levels of benefits. These are termed devastating, critical, tolerable, and minimal as resource consumption. And here the benefits are modest, considerable, significant, or outstanding in terms basically of revenues or better environment or visitor satisfaction. And then you can plot from the TIM model, these 4 quadrants are then given these names. The worst people, or the worst destinations, I should say, are misusers. So they're just using whatever resource they can, and they're not really getting any benefit from it. It's just overuse, overwhelming amounts of tourism, but they're not actually getting much out of it. And those in this quadrant are sleepers, so they're not using their resources much, and they're not getting much benefit. So they could do a lot more to improve their situation in relation to tourism. Those who are using a lot of resources but also getting a lot of benefits are just exploiters. And the best in the sustainable box is where we have sustainable use of the resources and with a good amount of benefit. That's basically how it's supposed to work. So if you do a TIM analysis for a location, you would start off maybe here. You're using a lot of resources, but you're still getting significant benefits. And that is roughly where Odessa lies on the whole. Not a lot of good infrastructure is available, but there are significant benefits from tourism revenues. You can then also analyze the general condition of the site. Is it poor, not so good, mediocre, or great? And then if you repeat the exercise every few years, you can see if the destination is actually improving. So maybe a site that was there 5 years ago is moving in the right direction to get up to a better state. So that's the theory behind it. And now I'll tell you about how we try to implement it. We have 5 clusters of questions, basic ones, name of location, area, population, and so on. The environment and the space of the location. So we took the wider Odessa region. And the environment are things like air pollution, green space, water quality, and so on. Economy, that's things like wages, budgets for the city council. society and culture, this is more to do with talking to people about how they view tourism and what they think about it. And collaboration is the amount of cooperation there is between civic society and the authorities in actually trying to get to a good tourism solution. I won't go through all of these, but with each of those 5 main clusters of questions, they were then subdivided into many key aspects. Each of those had a whole series of questions. So the point is that that questionnaire had 295 different questions that needed to be addressed. We worked with quite a few data providers in the city, culture and tourism, architecture and urban planning, ecology, municipal economy, and so on, and also some of the more commercial Odessa International Airport, Odessa Seaport, and some local businesses, the local tourism association, and so on. The tourism association didn't really have much data, actually, only their membership list. Getting the data was a challenge because the whole model is done in English. So we had to translate every single question into Ukrainian and get the answers back in Ukrainian and then translate them back into English. So there was a fair amount of work to do there. And also because Odessa being Odessa, some people would insist on using Russia rather than Ukrainian, and it just became quite a challenge to get the information. But we filled in these sheets. The same, another issue was trying to find about employees, who's actually employed in Odessa, if they're employed in the tourism sector or not, what their average salaries are. This data is not collected at the level of the city, not even at the oblast. This is national data, which is then kind of, you have to make averages of it and see if it will apply in Odessa. It's not ideal data. The only data which actually is measured properly and gets actual numbers is from the electricity company, because they're measuring people's consumption every, well, you know, in kilowatt hours, and they can aggregate that by day or month or whatever you want. And in this case, we got it for 3 years by month. We then have an online data form where we entered all the data. This was much a work of progress. Quite a lot of the project was about getting this kind of form in an order where we could enter the data satisfactorily. Had a number of design problems, but we got there in the end. And then for each data point, so for each of those for most of those 295 questions, we also had to give what is the source of the data. And nearly all of it came from third-party sources. It was an eye-opener for everybody that the city tourism department hardly collects any data. That they seem to be mainly concerned with maintaining some infrastructure, making sure that there's some promotional information and maps and so on. But in terms of actually collecting information, not much. We also had to find out how often that data is collected. Ideally, you should collect it every month. The problem we found then is that a lot of data in Ukraine is only collected quarterly and sometimes only once a year. So you don't know what is the temporal distribution of that data. And also, it's quite often collected in arrears. So when you're looking at data for September, it might actually be for July. And you don't know really which month that information has really come from, because it depends on voluntary submissions by hotels or restaurants or whatever. And then how accurate it is. And frankly, most of the time it was based on estimations and our interpretation. I mean, we used to run a tourism company until 2014 when the tourism collapsed. So our own experience of 10 years of running a tourism company was quite useful in trying to interpret this data. But estimations, of course, is not really ideal. Some of the outputs, this is about one-day visitors. And well, no surprise, they go up in the summer and come down, you know, and they're relatively level for the rest of the year. However, there is a problem here that according to the international definition of a visitor, it's just anybody who comes into the town and spends at least one night there. Well, when you're talking about a city the size of Odessa, they don't distinguish between people coming to school and going home at the weekend, or people coming in for business trips, or people just using Odessa airport as a transit place. So you've no real idea as to, I mean, they're visitors, yes, but are they actually tourists in the sense that most people think of it? You know, they're coming here to have a holiday and spend some money. Again, reasonable data for passenger arrivals from the cruise boats. And again, very obvious data. They start coming in spring, they peak in the summer, and there's nothing in the winter. The electricity consumption, I mentioned that was the most accurate data we got. And it's very interesting because apart from that little peak in September, the consumption actually goes down in the summer. Whereas you would think that if you're having like 500,000 visitors coming into the city over the summer period, it would actually go up for air conditioning at least. But then of course there isn't that much air conditioning relative to other uses. And certainly the electricity is used more in the winter for heating. And in the summer, tourism impact doesn't have a big effect on electricity consumption. Well, overall, for Odessa, our data accuracy level was low. A lot of data was not available. And so we conclude that using this model in Odessa was not very successful for all the reasons I've mentioned so far. And is a need for a huge amount of tourism digitalization in well, not just Odessa, but in Ukraine generally for tourism destinations, if the local authorities are going to have any handle on what actually is going on in their destinations. And that actually was a result in itself, because digitalization is a major EU objective. And clearly, and this wasn't just for Ukraine, by the way, the same thing was found in Georgia and even Romania. In fact, in case of Romania, it was even worse. A major destination like the Danube Delta, there was almost the same like Odessa, very little information. So this is just the way it is for tourism in the Black Sea region. Big analytics, however, because people don't actually have to, because the data is collected passively, that's much more valuable. And that data provided to the Odessa Department for Culture and Tourism was useful for them in understanding more about tourism in the city. And we also found out that actually tourism service providers, agencies, accommodation providers, transport providers, and so on, they were generally happy with the level of tourism in Odessa. They were making a living from it. They didn't feel that Odessa was crushed by tourism, particularly. You know, it is not a place which only lives for tourism. And so the opinions about it were relatively favorable. And there's definitely scope for improving the situation. And that's that. Thank you very much. Sorry about the interruptions.
Thank you.
So I think it's pretty much your lunchtime. Yeah, but the interruptions gone over a little bit. But if there's one or two questions, I'll be happy to answer them.